Good morning, and today's episode of Mrs. Jensen's audiobooks, we will be reading Romeo and Juliet Act 3 and 4 Summaries. We're combining these two acts together this week, and so please follow along with me as I read, and let's jump into Act 3. So if you remember where we left off from Act 2, Romeo and Juliet have just gotten married in secret, and nobody knows. The plan is that Romeo will sneak up to her bedroom tonight to spend the night together, but otherwise, besides Friar Lawrence and the nurse, nobody knows that Romeo and Juliet are married. Scene 1. As Benvolio and Mercutio walk in the street under the boiling sun, Tybalt enters with a group of Capulet men. Annoyed, Mercutio begins to taunt and provoke Tybalt. Romeo enters, and Tybalt turns his attention from Mercutio to Romeo and calls Romeo a villain. Romeo, who's now secretly married to Juliet and thus Tybalt's family, refuses to be angered by Tybalt's verbal attack. Tybalt commands Romeo to draw his sword. Romeo refuses and claims that he does not wish to fight Tybalt. Mercutio angrily draws his sword and declares that if Romeo will not fight Tybalt, he will. Mercutio and Tybalt begin to fight. Romeo, attempting to restore peace, throws himself between the two fighters. Tybalt stabs Mercutio under Romeo's arm, and as Mercutio falls, Tybalt and his men hurry away. Mercutio dies, cursing both the Montagues and the Capulets. "A plague on both your houses!" This is a very famous line, indicating that both families or houses are responsible for his death. When Tybalt, still angry, storms back onto the scene, Romeo draws his sword. They fight, and Romeo kills Tybalt as revenge for Mercutio. Romeo, shocked at what has happened, runs away. The prince enters, accompanied by many citizens and the Montagues and Capulets. Benvolio tells the prince the story of the fight, emphasizing how Romeo attempted to keep the peace. But Lady Capulet, Tybalt's aunt, cries Benvolio is lying to protect the Montagues. She demands Romeo's life. Prince Escalus chooses instead to exile Romeo from Verona. He declares that if Romeo is found within the city, he will be killed. In Capulet's house, Juliet's waiting for Romeo to sneak into her room that night. Suddenly, the nurse rushes in with the news of the fight between Romeo and Tybalt. Juliet claims that Romeo's banishment is worse than 10,000 slain Tybalts. The nurse assures Juliet she knows where Romeo is hiding and will see to it that Romeo comes to her for their wedding night. In Friar Lawrence's cell, Romeo is overcome with grief. Friar Lawrence tells him he's lucky. The prince has only banished him. Romeo claims that banishment is a penalty far worse than death, since he will have to live, but without Juliet. The nurse arrives and the friar sets forth a plan. Romeo will visit Juliet that night, but make sure to leave Verona before the morning. He will then hide out in Mantua until everything calms down in Verona. Capulet, Lady Capulet, and Paris walk together. Capulet says that because of the terrible recent events, he has had no time to ask his daughter about her feelings for Lord Paris. Unaware that Juliet has already married Romeo in secret, Lord Capulet promises Paris that he and Juliet will be married and that their wedding will be held on Thursday. It's Monday. Just before dawn, the nurse enters to warn Juliet that Lady Capulet's approaching. After spending the night together, Romeo and Juliet tearfully say goodbye. Unaware that her daughter is married to Romeo, Lord and Lady Capulet enter the room and mistake Juliet's tears as grief for Tybalt. Lady Capulet tells Juliet about her father's plan for her to marry Paris on Thursday, explaining he wishes to make her happy. Juliet is outraged and rejects the match. Lord Capulet becomes enraged and threatens to disown Juliet if she refuses to obey him. Juliet hurries to the Friar Lawrence. She claims that if the friar is unable to help her, she still has the power to take her own life. It is getting intense. Act 4. In his cell, Friar Lawrence speaks with Paris about his marriage to Juliet. Paris says that Juliet's grief about Tybalt's death has made her unbalanced, and Lord Capulet, in his wisdom, wink wink, has decided that they should marry soon so Juliet can stop crying and put an end to her sadness. Juliet enters, and Paris speaks to her lovingly and somewhat arrogantly. Juliet responds indifferently and remarks she hasn't married him yet. Friar Lawrence sends Paris away. though not before Paris kisses Juliet once. After Paris leaves, Juliet asks Friar Lawrence for help, taking out a knife, and says she'll kill herself rather than marry Paris. The friar proposes a plan. Juliet must agree to marry Paris. Then, on the night before her wedding, she must drink a sleeping potion that will make her seem as if she is dead for 48 hours. Her family will take her body to the Capulet tomb. The friar will send a letter to Romeo in Mantua so that he can greet her in the tomb when she wakes up. She will then return to Mantua with Romeo and be free to live with him away from their parents' hatred. Juliet agrees to the plan wholeheartedly, and Friar Lawrence gives her the sleeping potion. Juliet returns home, where she finds Capulet and Lady Capulet preparing for the wedding. She surprises her parents by apologizing for her disobedience and cheerfully agrees to marry Paris. Lord Capulet is so excited that he insists on moving the marriage up one day to Wednesday, which is tomorrow. Juliet heads to her bedroom to prepare for her wedding, and Capulet heads off to tell Paris the news. In her bedchamber, Juliet asks the nurse to let her spend the night by herself and repeats the request to Lady Capulet when she arrives. Alone, clutching the vial of potion given to her by Friar Lawrence, she wonders what will happen when she drinks it. If the friar is untrustworthy, she could die. Or if Romeo is late for some reason, she might wake up in the dark tomb alone and go crazy with fear. Worries aside, she toasts to Romeo and drinks the sleeping potion in the vial. Early the next morning, the Capulet house is busy with preparations for the wedding. Capulet sends the nurse to go wake Juliet. She finds Juliet dead and begins to wail, soon joined by both Lady Capulet and Capulet. Paris arrives with Friar Lawrence and a group of musicians for the wedding. When he learns what has happened, Paris joins in the sorrow. The friar reminds them all that Juliet has gone to a better place and urges them to get ready for her funeral. Sorrowfully, they comply. Oh my gosh, you guys, this is getting a little bit dicey. What will happen next?